Well, welcome everyone to another Wednesday Lunch and Learn. Today's topic: artificial and genetically modified ingredients. This has become somewhat controversial over time. As we're going to go through today, there is definitely a difference of opinion on some of these items, but the main focus of today is not to vilify. The main focus is to focus on informed choice, and you'll see that throughout. I mean, you're going to have to make the decisions on what's right for you and your family. And the whole purpose of today's webinar is to give you that opportunity to make that informed choice by giving you the information you need so that you can do just that. So let's jump in. First and foremost, America is getting fatter. We know that. There's all kinds of issues with the weight epidemic that we have in this country. All kinds of issues with people's unregulated bellies getting bigger and bigger. And in fact, the numbers are what they are. We've touted these multiple times. 74% of Americans are overweight. The scary stat, though, is 1/3 of our children are overweight. What's causing it? What's going on? Why all of a sudden is this an issue? Well, there's a multitude of factors. It's beyond the fact that kids don't go outside and play anymore, that schools are eliminating PE and recess from the curriculum, to the advent of technology and cell phones and all kinds of other issues that could be contributed to it. But food supply is a big issue, and we need, as parents, we as educated adults, we as people with influence need to use that influence to make informed choices and provide a better world for our kids. What we're going to show today is that even Batman is not immune to these types of issues. Because if you take Batman and all of his great physical prowess and you start adding a lot of the things that we use as snacks in this country, even Batman can get a little fat. What's interesting is we have compromised ingredients. We have compromised quality for time. Time is always the excuse that we use when we grab the bag, box, jar, or can. Time is the reason why we go through the drive-thru. Time is the reason why we order the pizza box. Time is always the reason why we don't have time to do the things necessary to take care of ourselves. And a lot of times it's the excuse of why we don't take care of ourselves because we simply don't have time. We got to find it. We got to go back to the days when time was not the issue, but that's for another day. Today, the whole topic, the whole discussion is this connection between science and food. Food is something that is grown naturally. It's grown organically. Science has come into play for any number of reasons, and we're going to talk about some of those today. But the whole topic today is about what happens when science and food collide. Most people will order something at a restaurant and they see it like this. You may see this and think, "Ooh, I would never eat that." Others would see that and say, "Man, where did he get it?" But the reality is that's the way we see food. Scientists, on the other hand, see food like this. See, they actually see what's in it. They see all the additives, the artificials. They see all the names. They see the preservative information. They see the food eradication and other issues associated with what's in the food itself. So just like that, we see food like this and we're thinking, man, which one of these do I want for lunch? This looks like your typical menu. Which one of these things would you eat? Scientists, on the other hand, they see food like this with all of the chemical ingredients that have been added to the food to preserve it, to add flavor, to add color, to add texture, to add crunch, to add addictiveness. That's right. There are additives to certain food products to make them more addictive so that we have a bigger response to them and we have that addiction quality so that they become our snack of choice. They become that food that we can't live without. They become that food that creates that dopamine response that our body just craves on an ongoing basis, especially if we see it, hear it, smell it, touch it, or more importantly, taste it anytime. We just have to have more and more of it. Let's jump into one that is not as controversial, something that everyone has seen, everyone knows about, but maybe you don't know all of the details about it. and that's the difference between sugar and artificial sweeteners. So, what I call the sweet difference here. What is the difference? Well, when you have sugar in your body, and that can come in the forms of food, straight sugar, it can come any form of sugar there may be, but usually it's some form of carbohydrate in the food that can be in the form of a grain, a fruit, a milk, a sweet, or something else. That carb is going to change to glucose in the body. That glucose is going to enter the bloodstream. That glucose is then going to trigger the pancreas to create an insulin response. And then that insulin is going to go in and help that sugar get into the cells that it needs to so you can use it as energy. And then, of course, it's also going to be storing some of that as fat. One of the benefits and downsides of sugar itself. But that's the typical process of how this thing works in a very simplistic standpoint. Trust me, it's a lot more complicated than that, but I've really tried to simplify it here. But when you actually talk about sugar itself and compare it to artificial sweeteners, you need a better understanding of what that means. See, Equal, for instance, came out in 1981 and it's 200 times sweeter than sugar. Sweet and Low, or its equivalent, came out in 1879, believe it or not. It's been around a long time, but it's 300 to 400%, or 300 to 400 times sweeter than sugar. And then, of course, you have your Splenda variety, and all of these have their chemical names, but I'm giving you the names so that you can understand them and you understand what they are. Came out in 1998, and it's 600 times sweeter than sugar. So it's amazing that people go to these products when they're actually trying to lose weight, make a better informed choice. The reality is they are as addictive or more addictive when you look at these numbers. But there's one that you've probably never even heard of. There is this other ingredient called neotame out there. It came out in 2002 that is 7,000 to 13,000 times, that's times, not percent, times sweeter than sugar. And you're like, okay, well, I've never heard of this. This is crazy. Why would I even care about this? Well, currently used in over 1,000 sugar-free foods on the shelves in the supermarkets that you're shopping in right now. So when you turn over that label and you see this ingredient and it's part of your favorite sugar-free food, it may be surprising to you to know that the reason why you love that food so much is because it is literally 7,000 to 13,000 times more sweet than sugar by itself, and it's labeled as sugar-free. So again, one of those opportunities for you to turn over the label, avoid what's on the front of the bag, box, jar, or can, and the marketing team's great work there, and actually pay attention to what's on the back and understand what this is. But see, when you use an artificial sweetener, what happens is that chemical is going to enter the bloodstream, and it has a sugar signal that's sent to the body. That's right, the body cannot differentiate from a signaling standpoint between real sugar and artificial sweetener. The pancreas is going to release that insulin into the bloodstream, looking to convert that sugar, looking for the sugar. But when it doesn't find the sugar, and artificial sweetener does not have the same composition as sugar, what ends up happening is that insulin will perform its secondary function, which is going to convert everything in the stomach to fat. Again, oversimplification of the process, but the reality is this. When you go to the drive-thru and you order the cheeseburger and the Diet Cola, the reality is what you're ordering is the cheeseburger and love handles. Because that's really what it's doing. When you put that diet soda or that diet drink into your body, that diet soda is in one of those forms of artificial sweetener that has been added to it. What you end up doing is having an insulin response, but the insulin doesn't find the sugar, so it does its secondary function, which converts that wonderful cheeseburger that you're eating to fat. I've now explained to you why 80% of the people that drink diet soda are overweight. It just doesn't work. Though it has the word diet on it, that's a great marketing idea, it does not have the effect on the body the way that it was intended. So let's look at something else. Americans consume more calories from this ingredient than from any other source. And I want you to just think about that for a second. It's what could be the number one source of calories in the U.S.? Because, we're talking about artificial sweeteners here. So artificial sweeteners have no calories, so it can't be that. So what could it be? What is it that Americans consume more calories from than anything else? High fructose corn syrup. That is right. It's another form of sweetener, not artificial. that is in just about everything these days, or what they call HFCS. If you're looking on a label and it has that, that's what it's referring to. And in fact, now, under the new labeling guidelines, they've actually been able to drop the term high fructose, and now you may just see corn syrup on the back. So when you're reading a label, make sure that you understand the difference. And if you see corn syrup, more than likely it is high fructose corn syrup. Now, why is this important? Why do you need to know about this? Well, when we got this wonderful ingredient in the 1970s, we started to gain weight. And in fact, if you look at the scale, what you find is that the increased usage of high fructose corn syrup in our diet has had a commensurate effect on our waistline. That's right, it kind of topped out in 2007, 2008 is when it kind of topped out, and our weight actually started to come back. But the reality is we have gotten heavier, and our obesity rates have skyrocketed with the advent of high fructose corn syrup and its addition to our U.S. diet. How much so? Well, what you need to know is that high fructose corn syrup has zero nutritional value. That's right, it has what we call empty calories. You're consuming it, but it's not adding any nutritional value to you. So what is the caloric take? What is it that it's doing to us? Well, if you actually look at the nutrition facts on high fructose corn syrup, 100-gram serving has 281 calories. There are no proteins. There's no fats. It is 76 grams of carbohydrates, and a tablespoon of the stuff is 53 calories. Just as comparison, a tablespoon of sugar is 48 calories. So that's right, it even has a larger caloric punch than straight sugar. It is a beast of a thing, especially when you look at what it's going to do to your waistline. So what does this mean to the American population? What are we doing? Well, on average, the average American is consuming 35 pounds or 127,460 calories per year of high fructose corn syrup. Now let's let that sit in for a second. We, the consumers in this country, are consuming 35 pounds of this stuff. It's adding that many calories. So what does that mean to us? What does that mean to our daily consumption value? That means we are consuming 349 calories per day on high fructose corn syrup alone. That's right. So our average diet, which by the way is 2,534 calories in this country, 14% of that is coming directly from high fructose corn syrup. That's right, that one ingredient. We have to get better at this, guys. We have to understand what's in our food. We have to understand that our time reason is not going to do anything but give us larger waistlines and an unhealthy lifestyle. But this was eye-opening. You know, when you actually do the math and you find out what the consumption rates are, this is why this is in everything that we consume. Let's talk about Diet Cola a little bit. I know I'm harping on this a little bit, but you know, people need to understand. And the reason why they do is because a lot of people, when they decide they want to make a change, the first thing they want to change is they want to move over to the diet drinks. You need to have an understanding of what these things are and what they're doing. This is the general feeling. You know, because it's diet, I can have more of it. And I know this is this is a bit of a funny picture in the sense that, you know, the super big gulp concept. But I mean, the idea is when people start to go on diets, it's funny how they almost feel like they have the right to drink more because it has the word diet on it. You know, you need to understand this one thing, if nothing else. The American Heart Association just recently, just in the past few months, released an unbelievable study about the consumption of a single diet soda a day and its effect on the brain. You know, this was just one a day. And most people that are drinking diet soda are not drinking one a day. They're drinking 10, 12, 14 a day. It's crazy the number that they're actually drinking. But you are going to increase your chance of getting Alzheimer's disease by 2.89x. And you're going to increase your chance of getting a stroke by 2.96x. That's right. That's how precise they got the numbers. It is crazy that you're going to have almost 3 times a greater chance of contracting Alzheimer's and having a stroke by simply having a single diet soda a day. So what happens if you're drinking, you know, the 6, 10, 12, 14 a day? Well, you know, you can kind of do the math, but it's not good. So if nothing else, just pay attention to that. But one of the other things I thought would be good to add into this presentation that's a little bit off, but it's something so that people can understand, is the diet cycle. Because see, a lot of reasons why people start consuming these diet sodas in the first place is because they want to go on a diet. See, when you start out day one on a diet, you have a certain BMR baseline. Your BMR is your basal metabolic rate. That basically means if you did not get out of bed and you just basically woke up in the morning, that's how your metabolism is going to burn so many calories based upon your BMR baseline. And see, when you start to lose weight, that BMR baseline drops down with you. So in other words, your metabolism will slow down and you're going to lose weight because you're reducing your calorie consumption. And at about day 90 on average, you are going to decide, you know what? I've had enough of conserving all of these calories. I can no longer do the calorie restricted diet thing. I'm going to go back to the way that I was and eating what I had because I hit my goal. So now I can do what I wanted to do. And what ends up happening is when you do that, you have the wonderful issue of, sorry, there's a dog in the background. When you have that issue, what you end up having is a wonderful situation where you start a process. See, because when you start to put the weight back on, what ends up happening is when you start putting the weight back on, your BMR stays at the baseline level. When it stays on the baseline level, what happens is you get back to your normal weight day 90, but unfortunately, you don't get to the point where you were supposed to be. In other words, you don't get to where that BMR line catches back up to your weight until about day 120. So as a result, what ends up happening to people is they gain all of that weight plus some back. That's right. So the way that the cycle works is simply this. It takes you roughly 90 days to lose the weight you want, and your BMR, your baseline, drops with you. But then on your way back up, it takes roughly 120 days to get back to the BMR baseline where you were when you started, but it only takes you about 90 days to get back to the weight. So that extra 30 days or so is going to mean that you gained it back plus some. So I've now explained to you the diet cycle. So what about the people that say I've lost the same 30 pounds 3 times? Well, unfortunately, that's not true. This is what we call the yo-yo diet cycle. We can't go down that process. You have to understand what's actually happening to you. And in fact, what happens is as you're going down and you're losing the weight the first time, you're losing lean muscle and fat. As you go back up, guess what? You're only putting on the fat. As you go down, you're losing fat and lean muscle. On the way up, you're just putting on fat. So what ends up happening when you do this, when you know that fat is only burning 2 to 3 calories per day per pound in your metabolism, and lean muscle is burning 7 to 9 calories. When you're losing that lean muscle and you're not putting it back on, guess what? Your metabolism is coming down, which means you're naturally going to continue to get heavier if you're eating the same amount. So no, unfortunately, it's not the same 30 pounds. It's actually a lot unhealthy, more unhealthy to keep that yo-yo diet cycle. So now I've explained that. Let's jump into a little bit more controversial topic. GMOs, genetically modified organisms. There's been all kinds of things in the news lately and all kinds of studies being done and everything else. But, one of the things that when we started the GMO process, I call it the can we versus should we process. See, what happened was you had a lot of crops that were being inundated with disease and bugs and soil eradication and other related issues, soil contamination and soil depletion. The scientists were trying to fix a problem and basically trying to feed a population that was growing. So, it was all good intentioned when it all started. And the question was always, can we do something? Is there something that we can do about this? We never sat back and said, should we? We never sat back and said, what happens if we change the molecular structure of a food? We never sat back and changed it, and thought about what would happen if we were consuming something that was genetically modified. Just wasn't part of the normal thought process. See, the real idea behind it was, can we make it bigger? Can we make it stronger? Can we make it drought tolerant? Can we make it disease resistant? Can we? And now that we've done it, and now that we have this in our food supply, and now that we've been able to do it in a cheaper, more cost-effective and fast way, with crop yields that, are through the roof. Now the question is, should we? And the science is mixed. At least it seems to be. Right now what you have when you go into a grocery store is over 70% of the foods that you see on the shelves are genetically modified in some way. That doesn't mean if it's, just on the middle aisles where it's, packaged in a box, jar, bag, or can. No, this is everything. This is on the outside aisles, inside aisles, by the register, any other place. I mean, it is everywhere, from the produce to the fruits and vegetables to the milk products to the cheeses, you name it. 70% of what you see in that store is going to be genetically modified. Not labeled as such, but we'll talk about that in just a second. Now, this is something that just came out last year. The National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. They just came out and said they have found no substantiated evidence that foods from genetically engineered crops were less safe than foods from non-GE crops. Now, what you need to understand about this study is they looked at thousands of research papers. They listened to testimony for months on end, if not years. They reviewed everything possible to try and refute and or confirm. They were trying to figure out what the answer was, whether or not GMOs were safe or not. And they came down on the side that they were safe. That was their finding. You can go out there and read it. It's well publicized. A Google search real quick, you will actually be able to find this thing. It was really surprising to a lot of people, but that was their finding. So if that's the case, why are we still talking about this issue? Well, here's some facts that you need to know. The U.S. and Canada are the only two countries, developed countries, that don't require labeling or completely ban genetically modified organisms. So what do all of these other countries know? What are all these other countries' concerns, including even China, which is somewhat surprising? What do they know that we don't? Why is it that these countries have basically either banned and or required labeling of these products? More importantly, why is it that we don't label the GMOs in this country? Well, here's the issue. 92% of Americans want genetically modified organisms labeled, but yet they're still not labeled in this country. 92% of people say, yes, I want it labeled. I want to know if I am actually eating something that is genetically modified, but yet we still don't have it. Our federal government has not found a way to do that yet, to make that law. So as a result, you now have 23 states working on mandatory labeling laws and 61 countries that already have the mandatory labeling laws in place and require it if you're going to sell the product in their country. How is this happening? Why can we have the overwhelming number of people wanting to know what they're eating, but yet we don't know? Well, this may be the answer. See, in 2013, what you had was a little over $25 million spent in lobbying by groups opposed to mandatory GMO labeling. 2014, a year after that, you had $66 million. In 2015, you had $101 million. So far through 2015, you have $192 million spent on lobbying to prevent labeling of genetically modified organisms in this country. And of course, one of the big players in that is Monsanto. They've spent a little over $8 million in that 3-year span trying to get people to avoid labeling GMOs. So here's the question, and this begs it. If these things are safe, if science has now inevitably proven that they are safe and has found no link between the fact that these things may have issues with human consumption, then why spend so much money opposing labeling the things? That's kind of the question, isn't it? I mean, if they're safe and science has now proven it, why does it matter if you label it? It should not be considered a negative. But yet, though 92% of Americans want it, we still don't have it. The reality is this: you need to make an informed choice. Is this something you want to do? Is this something you want to consume? But the question is, do you really know that you're consuming it? See, that's the funny part. A lot of times people will see the word organic on something and just assume that means non-GMO. It does not. Somebody will see the word natural and think that that means non-GMO. It does not. You can have an organic product that's genetically modified. Yeah, how is that possible? But, you just need to understand that one does not necessarily mean the other. So what are the 8 most genetically modified foods? Well, they're right here in front of you. Everywhere from the soybean to the alfalfa to cotton to corn to dairy to aspartame to the wonderful sugar beet to canola oil. Now, cotton. Really cotton? Why? We're going to go through it. I'm going to show it to you. So let's start out with the first one. Soybeans. Where do you find soybeans? Where do you find the genetically modified soybeans? Well, if you look at the list in just about everything that you consume, that's right, you need to understand that soy is now finding its way into all kinds of things, anywhere from potato chips and ice cream to frozen yogurts to infant formula. That's right, tons of soy in infant formula. Protein powders, margarine, cheeses, crackers, breads. It's in everything. It's also in shampoo, bubble bath, cosmetics. Now, why is that important? Don't forget that skin is the largest organ in your body, and you can ingest these things through the skin. So make sure you understand that when you're making these informed choices. Let's look at the alfalfa. What if you don't eat alfalfa? Well, you don't have to, because guess what? It's fed to almost all our conventionally raised livestock. So that's anywhere from meat, pork, poultry, eggs, and dairy. More than likely, you have genetically modified alfalfa that has been consumed by the animal that's producing the meat or the dairy and or the eggs that you're consuming. So just know that. What about this wonderful thing, the sugar beet? Well, you know what? It's added like sugar to a lot of things like cookies, cakes, ice creams, donuts, candies. Again, you need to make sure that you're informed, because a lot of these things are genetically modified. Again, like I said, I'm showing you the top 8, but just to give you an idea how they're used and where they're used so you're making an informed choice. Cotton. This was the one that was kind of weird, right? Well, you don't think about it, but it is in oil, it is in our fabrics, and it's in our clothes, but it's also in chips, peanut butters, crackers, and cookies. That's right, cotton oil is found in all 4 of those things, so be very careful and understand when you're reading the label or looking at a label that you very well may be consuming cotton oil as a result of that. Let's look at the next one, canola oil. Well, here's the thing. If you buy anything in a bag, box, jar, or can through a window into your car, good chances that you're consuming canola oil. Because it is one of the things that is found most in fast food. But you also have it in all processed foods. You have it in all kinds of oil blends, canned soups, big amount of canola oil there, as well as snack bars, frozen foods, especially your TV dinners and the like. Cereals, you need to make sure you understand that. What about the artificial sugars that we were talking about earlier? Well, the reality is this. If you're finding something that has the word diet, light, reduced fat, healthy, no sugar added, or sugar-free, chances are you are consuming a genetically modified form of artificial sweetener. It just is what it is. That's what you're going to be consuming, and you find it in sodas, drinks, ice creams, desserts, yogurts. It's everywhere. So just know that it wasn't enough that it was artificial. Now it's also been genetically modified to boot. Corn, probably our most genetically modified crop next to the soybean is corn. And, you find this in everything now. Remember, corn is the source of high fructose corn syrup that we now are consuming over, almost 350 calories per day of. 14% of our diet is directly linked to that. But it is in everything from salad dressings and tomato sauces to breads to even soy sauce. You don't even think about it, but you literally have corn in soy sauce. It's also found in sodas. Don't forget, high fructose corn syrup is one of the things they have now added even to the regular soda. Not just the diet soda, but the regular soda, because it has a cheaper value and it's easier to transport than real powdered sugar. So just know that is in there and something that you should be aware of. And then, of course, the big one is dairy. If you're not familiar with recombinant bovine growth hormone, you should be. See, it's banned in the European Union, Canada, and a lot of other countries, but it is found in all conventionally manufactured U.S. dairy products, including milk, cheese, butter, yogurt, ice cream, and whey proteins. Part of the reason why we source our whey protein from New Zealand at ID Life is to avoid this RBGH issue. It is something that you need to understand. You need to do some research on. You need to make an informed choice on, because if you don't know what RBGH is and your family is regularly consuming these various products, I can just tell you, just make sure you do your own research and you find out. I'm not going to get into the fray, so to speak, about good versus bad here, but I will tell you that there's a reason why the European Union, Canada, and other countries are banning it, but for some reason we still have it in our food supply. So what is today about? Today is about taking you from this, the uninformed consumer, the people that are confused, the people that see the label and don't understand. I was making the right choice. I picked up something that said sugar-free. I picked up something that said diet. I picked up something that said light. Why is my body not responding to this? To the person that can look on the back of a label and understand quickly what it is, what it means, and make an informed choice. That's what these are all about. That's what these Wednesday Lunch and Learns are for. They're all about providing you the power, the information, the materials, the education, so that when you turn a label over, you are no longer masked by what the marketing department put on the front of the label. You are now a consumer that is well informed and is making an informed choice for you and your family and the people that you care about and love, that you know what you're consuming and you know what you're putting in your body.